The black car idled outside the restaurant at 6:47 in the morning. Savannah Reed didn't see it arrive. She never saw them arrive. That was the whole point. She was inside the kitchen already, prepping for the breakfast service, when one of the hosts rushed back and whispered something to the manager. The manager's face changed. Not nervous. Something else. Something that looked like respect mixed with fear. "We have a VIP table," he announced. "Someone important coming in. Make sure everything is perfect today." Hi, viewers. If you walked into work and found out some powerful was about to arrive, would you stay and face them or run away? Let me know in the comments. Savannah kept her hands steady as she folded napkins. No one at this restaurant knew who she really was. They saw a 26-year-old waitress from Queens, good at her job, quiet, reliable. The kind of employee who never caused problems and never asked questions. That was exactly how she wanted it. But inside her mind, alarm bells were ringing. The morning crowd filled the dining room. Wealthy businessmen, investment executives. The usual Manhattan crowd, who dropped $400 on breakfast without thinking twice. Savannah moved between tables with perfect efficiency. Coffee here, eggs there, water glass refilled before it dropped below halfway. At 9:15, she saw the car pull up again. This time she noticed it through the window. Black. Expensive. The kind of vehicle that meant serious money and serious problems. Three men stepped out. Two wore dark suits and stood by the doors like guards. The third man, tall, composed, with the kind of presence that made people stop talking, walked inside without hesitation. Savannah's heart skipped. She recognized no one. But something about the way the manager moved, the way everyone suddenly became extra careful, told her this was who they'd been preparing for. Then she heard the man speak to the host. "We'll take the corner table, private, and bring me your best server. I don't want distractions." The manager looked around. His eyes landed on Savannah. "Perfect," he said, already walking toward her. "You're with VIP today. She's been invisible for 5 years. Subscribe before her hidden identity is exposed." As she approached the corner table, Savannah felt something shift inside her body. Her hands didn't shake. Her face didn't change. Years of training kicked in automatically. The mask of the invisible waitress slid firmly into place. But her mind was racing. The man at the table had just ordered water and opened a leather folder filled with documents. He was reading something, studying it with complete focus, when one of his associates leaned close and whispered a name. A name that made Savannah's entire world stop. Folders, the documents. She'd seen versions of them before, late at night. Months of research. Countless hours in her tiny Queens apartment, digging through public records and digital trails that led nowhere. But these weren't copies. These were originals. Real paperwork from something she'd been trying to uncover for years. Preston Reed didn't raise his daughter to be careless. He raised her to be prepared. From the moment Savannah was born into Manhattan's wealthiest families, her father had a simple philosophy. Wealth was a tool. Money was temporary. But knowledge, real, solid knowledge, that was permanent. Preston had taught her accounting before she could drive. Corporate law before she finished high school. The man's never sent her to college the normal way. Instead, he brought her into Reed Dynamics board meetings when she was barely 20 years old. She sat at tables with investors, lawyers, and executives who were 3 times her age. Most thought Preston was crazy. Savannah knew better. Her father was building something, not just a business, a foundation. He wanted his daughter to understand power, how it moved, how it shifted, how it protected itself. By age 21, she was already sitting through investment discussions worth millions of dollars. She understood derivatives. She could spot fraud in a financial statement. She read contracts the way other people read novels. Then everything changed. Savannah had been 21 when her father boarded the helicopter that October night. 21 when the news came. 21 when the world told her Preston Reed was dead. A storm, an accident, bad timing, bad weather, bad luck. She never believed any of it. The timing was wrong. Her father didn't fly during storms. He'd canceled this flight twice already that day. So why did he suddenly change his mind? And why, when the investigators finally released their report, did they move so incredibly fast? Most accident investigations took months. This one took weeks. The conclusion was final before questions had even been asked. Before anyone could really examine what happened, or how it happened, or who might have wanted it to happen. Savannah had been trying to find those answers ever since. Now, watching this man at the restaurant table, watching him hold documents that looked exactly like her father's company records, her blood ran cold. The helicopter went down at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night over Long Island Sound. The Coast Guard found pieces. That's what the news called them. Not bodies, not remains, pieces. As if the ocean had torn Preston Reed into fragments and scattered him across the dark water like garbage. The official report came 42 days later. The investigation, they said, was thorough. The conclusion was clear. The pilot had made a critical error: bad weather, low visibility, instrument failure. It was tragic, it was unfortunate, it was absolutely, completely, totally an accident. Nobody questioned it, nobody investigated further, nobody asked the important questions. Why would a man who despised flying in storms suddenly decide to fly in one? Why would a man with complete control of his schedule change his mind about a canceled flight? Why would a man with unlimited resources use a pilot who had a spotty safety record? Savannah had asked those questions in the privacy of her bedroom while her extended family fought over his will. While Sterling Reed, her father's younger brother, suddenly appeared as though he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Sterling moved fast. Faster than any normal person should move after their brother's funeral. The board meeting started immediately. Documents were presented. Signatures appeared. Amended agreements that nobody had ever seen before suddenly became real. Trust funds disappeared. Voting shares shifted. The company's direction changed overnight. Savannah had tried to object. She'd hired lawyers. Good ones. The best ones she could find with her own money. But every attorney she hired hit the same wall. Someone powerful was protecting Sterling. Someone with connections deep enough to make even the top lawyers in New York back away from the case. They'd give her excuses: scheduling conflicts, changing circumstances, better opportunities elsewhere. By the time she was 22, Savannah had lost her inheritance, her voting shares, and her position at Reed Dynamics. Her own uncle had taken everything. And the digital archive, the one thing that might have proved what happened, vanished completely. Every copy, every backup, every password, gone. They killed him and stole everything. Subscribe to see how she survives this. One investigator suddenly quit. Another disappeared. The third suffered a break-in that destroyed all his files. When Savannah tried to ask what was happening, she started getting threats. Anonymous phone calls. Strangers following her. Warnings sent to her apartment building. Messages that made one thing perfectly clear: stop digging or stop breathing. She was 23 years old when the truck hit the investigator's car. She was alone in her apartment when she got the call. He'd been helping her follow a money trail. He'd been close to finding something real. Now he was dead. The police said it was reckless driving. Savannah knew better. The apartment in Queens cost $340 a month. The building was old, the walls were thin, and the neighbors didn't ask questions about anything. Savassa had found it using cash, a fake name, a burner phone. She'd paid the first 3 months up front to the landlord and kept her head down ever since. No social media, no public records, no contact with the people who used to be her friends. Savannah Reed was dead. Sarah Vale was barely alive. The waitressing job came easy. She'd always been good with people, good at reading them, good at understanding what they wanted before they asked. But now she was doing it while staying completely invisible, while taking notes, while listening. Every conversation at every table told her something: business deals, money movements, corporate shifts. She was collecting information without anyone knowing why she was really there. Most nights, after her shift ended at 4 in the afternoon, she'd go home and work until midnight. Corporate filings, international transactions, shell companies registered in places like Hong Kong and Singapore and Macau, tax records, bank statements that she'd learned to access through contacts she'd built, former Reed Dynamics employees who had seen what happened and wanted her to know the truth. It took 5 years. 5 years of working as a waitress, while her friends from college were becoming executives. 5 years of staying hidden. 5 years of research in the dark. But she finally found something real. The money had moved through multiple countries. $400 million. It had been authorized by someone she'd never heard of before. A signature on documents that appeared repeatedly across years of suspicious transactions. Wei Zhang, that was the name. That was the person sitting at the center of billions of dollars of movement. That was the man who seemed to sit at the heart of everything connected to her father's death. She spent months researching him. Nothing existed online. No photographs, no interviews, no public records. It was as if Wei Zhang had been built to be invisible, just like her. But somehow this man had the power and resources to stay hidden at a level she could never reach. He existed in the spaces between companies, in the transfers between countries, in the digital shadows where real power actually lived. Savannah had become obsessed. Finding Wei Zhang wasn't just about her father anymore. Finding Wei Zhang meant understanding everything. It meant exposing the network that had stolen her empire and stolen her life. But there was one problem. She had no idea where he was. She had no leads. She had nothing except a name and a determination that had kept her alive through 5 years of hiding. Then fate intervened, and the man she'd been hunting appeared exactly when and where she least expected him. The parking garage in Philadelphia was empty at midnight. Savannah had been waiting for this meeting for 3 days. The message had come through an encrypted channel from someone she'd never met in person. A former Reed Dynamics executive, a man who had worked beside her father and watched Sterling steal the company. A man who had been too afraid to speak up until now. He'd texted her. Simple words, simple instructions. Meet me, alone. I have proof. The man was shaking when he stepped out of his car. She could see his hands trembling. His face was pale. Whatever he was about to tell her had cost him something enormous. Fear, risk, possibly his life. When he handed her the flash drive, his voice was barely a whisper. Your father didn't die in an accident, he said. I couldn't prove it before. I couldn't say anything. I was afraid. But there's evidence on this drive. Real evidence. Names, dates, transactions. People who know what really happened. Savannah reached for the drive. Her hands were steady even though her heart was exploding inside her chest. This was it. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. Everything. All 5 years of hiding, of working as a waitress, of pretending to be nobody. It had all been leading to this moment. Then the headlights came. Bright. Sudden. Blinding in the darkness. A truck engine that sounded like a predator waking up. The executive's entire body went rigid. His eyes went wide. In that moment, Savannah understood. The people who had been protecting Sterling. The people who had killed her father. They'd been watching. They'd always been watching. They'd followed her. They'd found this meeting. They were here. Run, the executive said. Just one word. Pure urgency, pure desperation. Savannah ran. She heard the crash before she made it to the street. Metal screaming against metal. The sound of a truck slamming into a car at full speed. The sound of impact that had no survivors. She didn't look back. She couldn't look back. She just ran into the darkness and disappeared into the Philadelphia night. One executive dead. One girl vanished. Subscribe before the assassins find her. By sunrise, Savannah Reed no longer existed. She'd never existed. She was Sarah Vale now. A ghost with a flash drive full of secrets, and a new understanding of what she was actually running from. These weren't just corporate criminals. This was something bigger. Something organized. Something that reached into governments and financial systems, and places where regular people could never go. The apartment in Queens was waiting for her when she got back to New York. The same small space, the same thin walls, the same complete invisibility. But now everything was different. Now she knew her father's death wasn't just a murder. It was a message, a demonstration of power, a statement that said, we can kill anyone, we can steal anything, and nobody will ever stop us. She held the flash drive in her hand and made a decision that would define the next 5 years of her life. She would find the peoples responsible, and she would expose them no matter what it took, no matter how long it took, no matter what she had to sacrifice. She had nothing left to lose, only everything to gain. The apartment stayed exactly the same for 5 years. The walls never changed color. The furniture never got replaced. The refrigerator still had the same dent on the bottom left corner from when Savannah first moved in and struggled to fit it through the doorway. Queens. The kind of neighborhood where people minded their own business and didn't ask questions about who lived next to them or what they did all day. Every night, after her waitressing shift ended, Savannah disappeared into her own investigation. The files covered every surface. Corporate documents spread across the floor, digital printouts taped to the walls, photographs of signatures, lists of names, transfer records that showed money moving through countries like a river flowing toward an ocean. She had become a ghost investigating other ghosts. A person who didn't exist, trying to expose people who'd been built to never be found. The shell companies came first. 3 of them registered in Hong Kong, 2 more in Singapore, 1 in Macau, all connected through a web of legal structures that had been designed by expensive lawyers for one purpose only: to hide money, to hide movement, to hide the truth about where billions of dollars were actually going. Savannah had started as a waitress knowing nothing. Now, after 5 years of research, she understood the architecture of hidden wealth. She knew which banks didn't ask questions, which countries had legal systems that could be bent if you had enough money, which tax havens actually functioned as modern versions of old pirate ships, taking stolen goods and making them legitimate through paperwork and connections. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday night in March, a transfer worth $400 million. It had moved through 3 different countries in the course of 4 hours, routed through banks in Hong Kong, Singapore, and then disappeared into a private account somewhere in Europe. The authorization signature appeared on every document. The same person, the same handwriting, the same authority that made billions of dollars bend to his will: Wei Zhang. That was the name. She'd never heard it before. Hadn't seen it in any of her father's old emails or business contacts. But there it was, on documents from years ago, on recent transactions from months ago, everywhere, 5 years in the shadows, subscribed before the search becomes lethal. Savannah pulled up every database she could access. Nothing. Wei Zhang seemed designed to be invisible. No photographs, no interviews, no social media presence, no public records. It was as if the man had been built to exist in the spaces between the legal world and the criminal world, in the gaps where real power actually operated. She had found a name. Now she needed to find a face. 3 months of searching led nowhere. Then Savannah discovered something. A business conference in Hong Kong. Wei Zhang's name appeared on the attendee list. It was the first concrete proof that he actually existed in the real world. That he wasn't just a digital ghost moving money through screens and paperwork. He was a person. He walked around. He ate food. He slept somewhere. He was real. She'd tried to track him from there, to follow his movements, to predict where he might go next. But he moved like water, flowing from one place to another with no pattern she could identify. Hong Kong, Singapore, Macau, Shanghai, Los Angeles. Back to Hong Kong again. Always moving. Never staying anywhere long enough to be found. Then came the call from a waitressing friend named Melissa. Casual. Simple. Nothing that seemed important at the moment. Melissa worked at a different restaurant across Manhattan, a place even more exclusive than where Savannah worked. She'd called to complain about a difficult reservation she had to handle. Some Texas billionaire is bringing international clients, Melissa had said. One of them is flying in from Hong Kong. Apparently, he's the kind of guy who makes other rich people nervous. My manager is losing his mind trying to prepare. Savannah had asked a simple question. What's his name? The answer had changed everything. Wei Zhang. Coming to Manhattan. Coming to a restaurant. Coming into the world where Savannah could actually see him. After 5 years of research through digital shadows and hidden transfers and corporate documents, fate was delivering him directly to her. 5 years hunting one man. Subscribe before he discovers she's hunting back. She'd immediately quit her job at her current restaurant. She'd needed to be where he was going. She'd needed to see him, to study him, to understand who this man was and how he'd become so powerful, and why her father's death somehow connected to his name on billions of dollars worth of transfers. The new restaurant was 3 blocks away, close enough that she could walk there. She'd gotten the job in 2 days. Her references were solid. Her resume was clean. The manager had barely asked any questions. She'd started the very next week, and then, exactly 5 days after she was hired, the reservation had come through. The Texas Billionaire, the international client from Hong Kong, Wei Zhang arriving on a Thursday evening for a private dinner. Savannah had felt time collapse into a single moment. Every year she'd spent hiding. Every night of research. Every threat she'd received. Every murder she'd witnessed. It was all leading to this moment. This man. This table. This chance. The restaurant's back office was cold and quiet at 5:30 in the afternoon. Savannah stood near the kitchen, checking place settings for the private dining room. The manager walked past 3 times, checking everything twice as much as normal. Nervous energy. The kind of tension that came from handling someone truly important. Someone powerful enough that mistakes would matter. The Texas client is one of the biggest real estate developers in America. The manager mentioned to one of the other servers, worth probably 5 or 6 billion. Apparently, the guy from Hong Kong is even bigger. Bigger money, deeper connections. Nobody wants to mess this up. Savannah listened while pretending to arrange napkins. The first guests arrived at 7:15. 3 men in expensive suits. They moved through the restaurant like they owned it. Confidence. Entitlement. The kind of comfort that came from always getting what they wanted. They were seated in the private corner. Water was poured. Wine was ordered. The manager gave Savannah a small nod. She was going to serve them. She moved toward the table with perfect composure. Her heart was moving faster than her feet could walk, but her face showed nothing. Years of training, years of hiding. She knew how to be invisible. She knew how to serve and listen and observe without anyone realizing she was actually studying everything they said and did. Then the door to the private room opened. Wei Zhang walked in. He was taller than she'd expected, composed in a way that suggested he'd never felt uncertainty a day in his life. His suit was perfect. His watch probably cost more than Savannah's entire apartment building. He carried a leather folder and moved toward the table with the kind of confidence that only came from knowing you were the smartest person in every room you entered. He didn't look at Savannah as she approached. He didn't acknowledge her existence. To him, she was exactly what she'd always been, a service worker, someone who existed to fulfill his needs and then disappear. The secret she had been hiding and the secret she had been chasing were about to collide at the exact same table. The conversation started normally. Business talk, real estate deals, investment portfolios. The kind of topics that wealthy men discussed while eating expensive food. Savannah filled water glasses and took orders. She stayed close enough to hear. She stayed far enough away to be invisible. She was becoming a ghost, not present, but listening to everything. Then Wei Zhang's associate said something that made her entire body go rigid. "The Reed situation needs attention," the man said in English, using a casual tone like he was discussing the weather. Savannah's hands froze for exactly 1 second. Then she forced them to keep moving. She poured water. She adjusted napkins. She showed no reaction. But inside her mind, every alarm was screaming. "Sterling is getting nervous," the associate continued. "He's worried about exposure. He keeps calling about the girl. She's still alive somewhere. We should probably handle that problem before it becomes a real problem." The girl. They were talking about her. Wei Zhang nodded slowly while reading the menu. The girl disappeared 5 years ago. She's either dead or she's learned to stay hidden. Either way, she's no longer a threat. Sterling needs to stop worrying about ghosts. The company is secure. The money has been moved. There's nothing left to expose. Savannah took their orders with a steady voice. She repeated everything back to them correctly. She smiled politely. She turned away and walked toward the kitchen like her world hadn't just shattered into 1,000 pieces. They knew she was alive. They'd been looking for her. They were discussing whether she was a threat while she stood 3 feet away from them, taking their dinner order. She's not just alive anymore. They know she exists. They're actively hunting her. In the kitchen, Savannah's hands shook as she gave the orders to the chef. She gripped the counter. She forced herself to breathe. She couldn't panic. She couldn't run. She couldn't do anything except go back to that table and serve them like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She'd found Wei Zhang, but he'd been looking for her the entire time. The hunter had become the hunted. And now, as she turned to walk back into the dining room, she understood that her 5 years of hiding were about to end in the next few minutes. Savannah approached the table to deliver their appetizers. Her hands moved with mechanical precision. The plates were set down correctly. The wine was poured at the perfect temperature. She was the perfect invisible servant, the perfect ghost. Then Wei Zhang looked up. His eyes found her face. Time stopped. For exactly 2 seconds, his gaze locked onto hers, not with recognition, not with anger, with something far more dangerous, with calculation, with a man analyzing a problem and deciding how to solve it. He studied her face, her bone structure, her eyes, the way she held herself. Savannah felt him reaching into her mind, trying to place her, trying to remember where he'd seen her before. She turned away before he could finish the thought. She walked back to the kitchen at normal speed. She didn't run. She didn't panic. She moved like the invisible server she was supposed to be. In the kitchen, the chef asked about the next course. Savannah answered automatically. Her mouth was moving, her hands were steady, but her mind was screaming. He'd seen something. He'd recognized something. Maybe not her face, maybe not yet, but he'd felt it. That moment when something didn't fit. When a server seemed like more than a server. When a ghost seemed like someone real. She had maybe 5 minutes before he connected the pieces. Maybe 10 if she was lucky. Maybe 30 seconds if his memory was as sharp as his reputation suggested. Savannah had spent 5 years finding Wei Zhang. She'd spent 5 years investigating her father's death. She'd spent 5 years building a case against the people who'd stolen everything from her. But she'd never actually planned what would happen when Wei Zhang realized she was alive. When he understood that the girl he'd written off as dead or gone forever was actually standing 5 feet away from him, listening to every word he said. She glanced at the window in the kitchen door. Wei Zhang was leaning back in his chair. He was still watching the door, still thinking, still trying to remember. Savannah made a decision. She was going to walk back into that dining room. She was going to finish serving their dinner. And then, tonight, when the sun came up, everything was going to change. Because Wei Zhang was a threat, but so was she. And he was just beginning to understand that the ghost he'd forgotten about 5 years ago had actually been standing in front of him the entire time. Subscribe and turn on notifications right now so you don't miss the next story that will change your life. Billionaire Tales brings you the most inspiring and powerful stories from the world's most interesting people. Stories about love, revenge, betrayal, and redemption. Stories that remind us that nothing is ever truly lost if you're willing to fight for the truth. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if you would have done what Savannah did. Would you stay hidden, or would you reveal yourself? Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Let's inspire each other to never give up, no matter how impossible things seem. Thank you for being part of the Billionaire Tales family. The next chapter is coming soon.